So when we launched Avvo in 2007, and it certainly was different in that we're rating and profiling just about every lawyer in the country. So we create the profiles based on public records data. The rating itself is actually not based on consumer feedback. It's based on the Avvo rating, which is effectively a resume evaluation. So it's an algorithm that takes into account all the factors in a lawyer's background. What it effectively does, it tries to replicate what an experienced lawyer would do if they were looking at the resume of a lawyer they didn't know and trying to evaluate the likelihood that that lawyer would be able to provide competent legal help. So that's the Avvo rating in a nutshell, but we also have consumer ratings. That's a separate rating on a sort of a more traditional 1 to 5 star basis with consumer feedback. As you probably know, it was controversial with lawyers because lawyers are not used to being rated. They like to have things under their own control. And so while we let them claim their profiles and they can add photos and video and all sorts of information, biographical details to their profile, they can't delete the client reviews. They can't delete the information about their licenses, and they can't delete information about disciplinary sanctions. And so as a result, we were sued the week we launched. We've been sued a couple of times since by sanctioned lawyers who are unhappy with the information that we provide to the public. We have fought all of those lawsuits vigorously. We've gotten every one of them dismissed on the pleadings. The latest one just last week, and that attorney is going to have to pay our legal fees.
Wow, congrats.
Thanks.
So what are they suing you guys for?
Anything and everything. I mean, it runs the gamut from allegations that the rating somehow defames them to misrepresentation, violation of unfair trade practices statutes. None of these things apply to us. I mean, we are, at the end of the day, we're effectively a media company. We are providing consumers with important information about attorneys, and we are 100% within our First Amendment rights, both to present that information about their sanctions and to present the opinions that we draw from it in the form of the Avvo rating.
So as a consequence of the lawsuits and some of maybe the press, how have you used social media to get the word out to dissuade lawyers from trying to sue you?
Well, I don't want to overplay this because, I mean, we certainly hear from lawyers all the time when they're threatening us with lawsuits. It probably happens a couple of times a week. But this is still a minority. I mean, on the other hand, we have nearly 100,000 lawyers who have claimed their profiles on Avvo. We have several thousand lawyers who are paying us to advertise on Avvo. There are thousands of lawyers who are answering questions in our Q&A forum. So that there are many more lawyers who find the service valuable than there are those who threaten to sue us. It's just that this tends to be a fairly vocal minority when they're talking to us. We actually use social media, though, on both hands, in that we use social media, particularly Twitter and some of the more traditional listservs that lawyers rely on, to monitor what people are saying about us and respond to it. So if people are talking about problems they're having with our service, we want to respond to it. We want to fill in misapprehensions they may have, and we want to get feedback. I mean, we're always improving our product, and a lot of the improvements we make to the Avvo service is based on feedback we receive from attorneys.
So when you do notice either misunderstandings or negative comments on some of these listservs or on Twitter, what is the overall impact of you actually responding and addressing those concerns and having a conversation with them?
I think it's a positive impact. I mean, we've engaged with a lot of lawyers. We've certainly had a lot of lawyers who may have started off initially skeptical about us, but when we've engaged with them, when we've filled them in a little bit on what our mission is, our consumer focus, and the background of our team. I mean, our team's very experienced. It's not a fly-by-night operation. I mean, everyone here has deep technical expertise, a lot of background in consumer-facing technology companies. And so once they understand that, we typically get people to the point where they understand it a little bit better. Some of them become raving fans. Some of them have their apprehensions heard. And then there's certainly some who aren't willing to, and despite what we tell them. And I'm always happy to engage in those conversations with lawyers to try to fill them in on what we're doing. But at a minimum, they're having their questions addressed and answered.
That's great. So really having that conversation has been a really positive thing.
It is, and social media is great for that because you can monitor that, you can get a sense for when people are frustrated, or for a lot of times they're laboring under a misapprehension about how our service works. I mean, people sometimes think that they can pay to advertise with us, and that's going to impact their Avvo rating, which clearly isn't the case. And so these are the types of misapprehensions that we want to address whenever they come up, whenever we see them in social media.
Can you kind of walk me through over the last few years as your website has become more popular and you've become more and more visible? Kind of what has your growth been like? You know, did you guys start out with a pretty decent amount of traffic, or do you start with a little traffic? And you know, did you have a couple moments in time where you can look back and remember where you guys kind of broke through a critical kind of growth metric?
Yeah. So when we launched. We thought we got a lot of traffic initially because we got sued, and so that was terrific PR and engagement with the legal community at first. But looking back, I mean, it was, you know, we were running at maybe 30 or 50,000 uniques every month for the first year after we launched, with some spikes and the like. And then at that point, once we had really built up this base and we started having this Q&A forum where people could ask questions, things really started to spike about a year into our business in the middle of 2008. And it very, very quickly grew to the point where we were running in the neighborhood of 1 to 1.5 million uniques every month.
Wow. And so for you, you kind of equate that to the whole move to the Q&A and having that solid foundation from that first year?
Yeah, I think it was a combination of the move to the Q&A and the fact that we had enough lawyers engaging at that point that we had a lot of information built out within the profiles and in the search pages where people could go and find information about a lawyer. And since that time, we have added additional verticals. We added a healthcare vertical about a year and a half ago, and we added a dental vertical just a couple of months ago. Our traffic has grown, you know, over that time to the point we're running at about 3 million uniques a month at this point. And we expect that we'll probably see another climb as the healthcare is growing at a similar pace to what we saw with legal in the early days. Mm-hmm. But again, it's building the information out, building the content, building that base both of professional engagement and of consumers coming in and asking questions.
Can you share kind of your approach to content development? Is this something where you try to get the support of people who are actually profiled on your sites to contribute content, or are you guys driving the content creation?
Almost all the content on Avvo is user-generated. So we will, at the beginning, like I remember back when we first launched the legal Q&A, I would actually answer some questions. Mark, our CEO, who's also a lawyer, he would answer some questions. It's sort of getting the flywheel going. But once the community started to engage, and we did a lot of reach out to lawyers and sort of filled them in on the advantages of answering questions and why they would want to do it, and started adding in some game mechanics that we've built into the Q&A, it has proven to be tremendously successful. So all of that content is user-generated at this point, and we have thousands of questions every week, thousands of lawyers who are engaging every month to answer those questions. It works out tremendously well.
Can you share some of the game metrics that you've incorporated that have worked well?
Sure, it's not terribly sophisticated. I mean, we haven't gone down the route of all sorts of achievements and badges and the like. Not that we haven't considered it, but it felt a little too complicated. I mean, we've basically done things around largely around leaderboards. So there are achievement levels that people can reach by answering a certain number of questions, contributing content. But basically, you get points for answering questions, you get points for commenting, points for voting answers up. So there's engagement on multiple levels when people are working within the Q&A forum. But largely what they see, and this is a big reason why lawyers answer questions on Avvo, is they see enhanced visibility on the site. So their answers show up within their profiles, and it helps them climb these leaderboards, which are both overall on the site as well as temporal, like leaders for the last week, and within particular practice areas.
So it's really interesting to learn that you guys are expanding into other verticals and really taking this same model and applying it to dentists and healthcare.
Right.
Have you noticed any fundamental differences between the legal vertical and those other verticals?
Yeah, there clearly are differences. I mean, if you think about doctors in particular, consumer-facing doctors are increasingly working within large medical groups, whereas consumer-facing lawyers still very typically work either in solo practices or small firms. So the big law firms are all working for corporations. They're not facing the consumers. It's kind of the opposite with doctors. And so the marketing spend, and we're still working on how we're actually going to sell advertising to doctors and medical groups, but it does look to be very different on the consumer-facing side. On the other hand, elective medicine and dentistry is far more similar to consumer-facing legal. These tend to be small practices. They do their own marketing. They have to market a lot because it is either, it is largely elective work. And so we look at those, and dentists in particular. It's only been a couple of months, but we're struck by how similar it is to legal.
Nice. Can you comment and give us kind of overview of how you guys are approaching advertising?
Yeah, advertising on Avvo, I like to say it's a pretty old school model. So right now we only sell advertising in the legal vertical, and we don't want to sell advertising into the other verticals until we feel like there's really a lot of value that's going to be driven through those channels in terms of the level of consumer usage. So in the legal area, what we sell is it is a classic insertion ad. So we sell up to 3 sponsored listings and 1 display ad in every combination of geography and practice area. So Tucson DUI, well, there might be 3 sponsored listings and up to 1 display ad that would be sold within that. So it's kind of Google-esque in that sense. Like when you do a competitive Google search, you'll see a few of those sponsored listings around your search results. But again, it's not performance-based. I mean, we sort of use historical performance to calculate what the monthly rates are going to be, but it's all just it's a recurring monthly payment sold on an insertion basis.
So from your overall traffic, could you give us kind of a breakdown on what the profile is? Are you getting a lot of traffic from social media sites, from search, from direct referral?
The biggest source continues to be search, and I think that's a reality when it comes to legal. We see a little bit from social media, and we certainly see an increasing amount of direct referral. That would be our second biggest source, simply because we've built up the word of mouth now, particularly within the legal community. But because legal issues aren't things that people are playing around with on the internet. I mean, it's not something people do for amusement. It's typically something they address when they have a problem. And so I don't see that changing that much. And one of the other hard parts about when you think about social media, I mean, the big thing you want to do with social media is to get people talking about your service, your product, all of this stuff. That's an inherent problem for legal, whether you are running a legal media site like Avvo or you're running your own bankruptcy firm. These tend to be, they're not the kind of things that people talk about on social media that much. I mean, it's one thing to say, hey, here's a photo of this great new pair of shoes I bought. Well, people aren't typically going to say, hey, you should check out this great DUI attorney I had to hire last week. And so that's a bit of an impediment to virality within the legal vertical.
So have you guys tried any more traditional marketing approaches?
We've tested stuff but very, very little. It's only been around the edges. So we've done a little bit of search engine marketing, but it's been very, very small. We have stayed away from, I guess, the bread and butter of consumer legal marketing, which has traditionally been cable television, billboard advertising, newspapers, and the like. We're very metrics driven, and it's really hard to see a return or to at least calculate a return in a lot of those media. The growth patterns worked out pretty well so far. So I think that, to the extent we look at that stuff, we continue to look at ways that we can extend our reach and our brand through social media. And there's probably a variety of other marketing ways that we'll start working with attorneys down the road. But I don't see us ever dipping our feet in too deeply on traditional advertising.
So one of the problems, that a lot of companies have who use social media or predominantly just all online advertising is kind of calculating what the return on investment is.
Right.
Are there a few important metrics that you guys pay attention to?
Well, there's a lot of internal metrics that we look at. When we look at the how, like for instance, the tests that we do around search engine marketing, I mean, we might be doing them to try to acquire questions within a particular area where we think we need to drive a little more traffic. So we might be looking at, okay, what are we ending up spending through SEM to acquire a question. But again, it's so small scale, it's just some little tests that we've run. When we think about the attorneys on our site and the value they're getting from the advertising they buy from Avvo, we're looking at the kind of contacts that we're driving to them. We're using trackable phone numbers, so we know how many phone calls we're driving to them. We can obviously see the email traffic to them, the website visits. So we're really looking at those contacts.
Now, do you share those metrics with the people who have paid for advertising?
Yeah, absolutely. So they have a dynamic dashboard. I mean, they can look at it anytime they want.
What is the impact of having that dashboard and enabling them to actually see the actual metrics been on your advertising?
Well, it's critical. I mean, and it's because if you don't have that, then you're basically having a data-free discussion, and so people's subjective impressions are going to drive their decision making. We talk to them about their advertising results all the time. Our account managers are always working with our advertisers on that, and I think it's my sense is it's probably the single biggest factor that keeps our churn down with our advertisers. Our churn rate with our advertisers is very, very low, and I think it's the fact that we're giving them all of that data. I mean, they may anecdotally feel like, well, last month I didn't get that many great leads through you guys, but we can show them exactly what they got. They can see that there's at least this this funnel of people coming to them, and yeah, I mean, there's no way to guarantee that it's all going to be 100% great leads that turn into clients, but they've got that dashboard there, and they can see that there's a flow of it. It's not a black box.
Yep. What are some of the approaches that you've used to actually find lawyers who are interested in advertising on the site?
Well, one of the advantages we have is that we have so much traffic with about 3 million consumers coming to the site every month, and we have this engagement from lawyers. So we certainly can look at the lawyers who have found Avvo, and they may have found us because of an email blast we did, or because their profile ranks well for Google, so they do a name search for themselves and they find their Avvo profile. So certainly we look at those who've started engaging with Avvo, maybe they're answering questions or claiming their profile. We'll reach out to them and make sure they know about the advertising opportunities. So email has probably been the most effective route. In the early days, we also basically went out and looked for people who were advertising in other venues, typically in the Yellow Pages. It's very easy to figure that out, and so those are people who obviously have an interest in marketing. They get the fact that they need to market their practice. They have a budget to market their practice, and so it's a fairly easy step to go out and contact them.
Great. Have you noticed? So you haven't tackled advertising for your two new verticals?
No, we haven't yet.
Do you think that it's going to be a very similar type of approach, or do you feel like it's kind of going to be a different beast?
I think it's going to be the same approach. I expect it'll be the same approach for elective medical and for dental. I think we'll probably end up having multiple advertising products in health, though. So we'll probably do the same type of sponsored listing and display ads when it comes to the dentists and when it comes to the elective guys. But then we'll probably have some additional advertising products on the consumer-facing health side, just because it's not so much the individual practitioners. I mean, if you look at our advertising, it's all about individual practitioners, individual lawyers. We'll probably have more group advertising. And actually, if you play around on our health pages, you'll probably see some of that already. We've got a number of test ads that are running with some of the medical groups who have engaged with us. We have a program where groups can claim all of the profiles of their physicians or lawyers. And that's something that, on the medical side in particular, they've really embraced.
Since you're dealing with a lot of user-generated content on a regular basis, can you comment how much user-generated content are you guys generating each week, and how do you ensure that it's really quality content?
Well, It's tough in that we're generating a lot of user-generated content. So I was looking at this yesterday, and we had something like 18,000 answers in the last month.
Wow.
So these are all professionals, mostly lawyers, answering questions. And the way we try to make sure that that's quality, and actually if you play around, if you ask a legal question, you'll be surprised at how quickly you get an answer, or how you may get multiple answers. And oftentimes they're quite in-depth. There's no guarantee they're going to be great, though. So one of the ways we try to police that is we have a voting mechanism. So the person who asks the question can mark the answer that's best. And then other attorneys can come in and both comment on other answers, or they can mark them as a good answer. And so these are mechanisms that we try to use to have the best answers float their way towards the top of the stack. And then we also have a concept called legal guides, and we have probably 100,000 of those, legal and medical guides. And so these are more user-generated. You can write it. They're supposed to be about 500 to 800 words, so you could write a guide to what to do the third time you're arrested for DUI. It can be as specific as you want, and those really run the gamut in quality. And so we actually have an internal content team that does a bit of curation around those. And so in the most extreme cases, we'll actually delete them. In other cases, we will non-index certain pages. And then we're in the process of building topic pages where we're trying to provide some more structure around the top end and the best pieces of that content through a curation process.
Can you share some of the insights you've learned from working with getting users to actually generate some of these guides? Is it about sending a direct kind of value proposition? Is it about making it just a really easy experience? How do you motivate them to take this action, create all this valuable content for you, while still also promoting themselves in their practice?
Yeah, it's a combination of both. I mean, you need to make it easy, particularly when you're dealing with professionals, because they don't have a lot of time. So we've created these forms. We've made them very simple. There's not a lot of impediments to doing this. And then the value proposition we walk them through is that this is another form of marketing. So it greatly enhances your visibility. The way I just try to describe it to lawyers is that if someone finds your profile, we know that long copy sells. I mean, they're going to be interested in finding out more about you. And if they can look at your profile, see your background, see a bunch of questions you've answered and how intelligently you've answered them, see some legal guides you've written about the areas you practice in, well, they know a ton about your practice before they even call you. And they're far likelier to do that because you're not just a cipher there. You're not just an empty ad or just your name, rank, and serial number. And that's been a very compelling message for attorneys. I think that so many of them inherently get the value of putting more information about themselves and their competence out there.
So, for the Q&A section, is that primarily visitors who have legal questions or are looking for legal advice generating the questions, or are you guys also helping to curate some of those questions to start those conversations?
We helped curate those questions at the beginning when we first launched the Q&A product. We don't anymore, and we haven't for years on the legal side. There's enough with all of these users. I mean, we're having thousands of these questions come in, and so they're literally just flooding in every day from wherever people are asking their questions throughout the country and on every imaginable legal topic.
For the guides, you're saying it's really critical to make it easy for them.
Right.
To contribute. Can you talk about the experience of getting, your general person who's a visitor looking for legal services to take the action to add a question? Any insights to share on that?
Well, it depends on where they're at in the funnel. I mean, obviously, if they're ready to hire a lawyer, we want them to be looking at the search engine, the search results pages, and finding the right lawyer. But I mean, a lot of people are sort of at the more initial phase where they're trying to figure out, how serious is my legal problem? Do I need a lawyer? So we really, on our homepage, we encourage people to ask a question or to search for legal advice. And then throughout those pages, if they're doing a search on our site through all the other questions that have been asked and answered, there's always we're always cross-selling into that. Hey, ask your own question. I mean, if you're not finding exactly what you're looking for here, we encourage you to go ahead and ask your own, and then get the advice. And it's all tied together with social media, where the attorneys can automatically blast out the answers they're given. There's email follow-up on both ends, so that if you're the consumer, you get an email whenever there's a new answer added. Attorneys can sign up for notifications so that they know whenever there's a new question asked within their practice area, etc.
So have you seen that the email notifications are a really good way to draw people back to the site and increase the amount of engagement and content people are contributing?
It is absolutely on the lawyer side. It's worked out tremendously well, and we're going to be we're always rolling out more enhancements to make it easier for them to engage and answer questions, vote questions up and the like. We've only scratched the surface on the consumer side, but we're going to do a lot more on that front this year in terms of driving people back to the site, encouraging them to find an attorney or review the attorney that they've hired, ask another question, that type of stuff.
So do you guys primarily have just written content, or do you also do video content, podcasts? What type of media do you guys produce?
Yeah, we do. So we also offer the ability within the guides and the like for people to leave video legal guides or photo guides. The photos in particular are popular on the medical side, but we have a lot of lawyers at least who've left video legal guides as well. It's sort of early days for that, and I'd say that the quality of those things is all over the map. For myself, particularly when it comes to legal topics, I find the written stuff to be a little more valuable because you can skim through it a little faster. But I think we'll see more and more of that video content develop as it gets more sophisticated.
Have you noticed an impact on the legal community as a result of your service? Because you guys are pretty much the first ones tackling this problem in the legal field, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are other directories, but there's no one that's ever done anything like we have with the combination of all of the public information. It's non-pay to play, so every lawyer is going to be in there, and then this Q&A on the back end. So it's certainly unique in the legal area. We've become I'd say we've become a big name in legal over the last 5 years. I mean, I think our recognition and our penetration into the legal marketplace is well beyond our expectations when we launched this thing. And part of that has to do with the controversy initially and the fact that, and even today, some attorneys are, they're still getting used to the idea that this is not 100% within their control. But so many of them are getting the fact that in order for any of this stuff about legal to be useful to consumers, there has to be that level of credibility and trust. They have to feel like this is a forum that's open to them. They can leave feedback. They can find out if a lawyer has been disciplined, what their bar status is. You've got to have that credibility or it just doesn't work for consumers.
So over the next, let's say, 2-3 years, where do you see your business going? You've already shared that you're exploring other verticals.
Yeah, we are always looking at other verticals to get into. There remains a lot of work for us to do on the medical side. I mean, there's a tremendous opportunity in medical, but it's also, there's also a lot more resources for consumers out there. And so we're definitely an innovator and really the only ones doing what we're doing in legal. There's more competition, there's more information on the medical side, and so that's something that we continue to work with. We also think that on the legal side, there's a lot more that we can offer to lawyers in terms of social media marketing, marketing automation. I mean, there are many things that lawyers are really just getting their feet wet with how to market, and they are not sort of coming to the game as inherently good marketers. It's something that's a challenge for a lot of lawyers. And at the same time, the legal marketplace is going through a lot of changes right now. As technology takes away some of the commodified legal work around the edges, there's a lot of flux and uncertainty in the legal marketplace right now, and so we identify that, and we hear from a lot of lawyers that there are many ways that us with our background in technology can help lawyers get better about online marketing.
So it sounds like what you're saying is that there's a potential to expand into tools specifically designed for lawyers beyond just publishing content on your site or advertising on your site, but actually to use to, engage maybe on social media or to market their own, web presence or profiles.
Yeah, that's absolutely a possibility, and it's something that we're certainly taking a look at and have for some time. It's just that we don't want to do anything that's basically a me too. I mean, we've got a limited amount of resources, and we really want to be focusing on things that are game changing and innovative, both for lawyers and providing consumers with a lot more value than they've had to date.
Could you share kind of your guys' history? Were you guys bootstrapped, or did you raise a seed round, or how did you guys grow? Can you kind of share your kind of the growth of your company? You know, how many people founded it, and how many people work there now, and what are some of the key kind of growth stages you went through?
Sure, and I'm gonna have to run here shortly too, though.
Oh, no worries.
Call to get to, but so we our founder is Mark Britton. He was the first general counsel at Expedia. And so he founded the company. He actually raised money pretty fast pre-launch. He actually raised an A and a B round before we launched. So $3 million in the A round and $10 million in the B round. And then we did a C round back before we launched medical in 2010. So that was another $10 million. So we've raised $23 million. Our investors, Benchmark Capital down in Palo Alto, they're our lead investor all the way through. And then we added Ignition up here in the B round, and then DAG Ventures down at Palo Alto in the C round. We launched with about 15 or 20 employees. We're in the neighborhood of 60 employees now, sort of split equally between product development, sales, and everyone else.
Cool. In closing, anything you want to share? How do people who are lawyers or medical professionals or dentists who are interested in learning more about the benefits of claiming their profile or considering paid advertising, where should they go to find out more?
Well, they should start with Avvo, and they should look for their profile. In the footer, there's a place where you can search for your profile, find it, and make sure you claim it. Claiming it's free. They can add all the information they want. It's a no-brainer to do so, simply because if people are going to find your profile online, they might as well find as much information as possible. And certainly, if professionals have questions about it, we're always happy to help. They can even send me a message via email or on Twitter, and I'm happy to follow up with them and help them fill out and optimize their profiles.
Great. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing some of the insights you've gained over the last few years as you guys have grown your service.
Okay, thanks. Happy to help.